I'm sitting here with Dave Willits. We met through Tim Kaufman, who kind of introduced us. And just want to say first off, Dave, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me. Maybe you could just start out by telling us where you're from and a little bit about yourself.
My name is Dave Willits. I'm from Waterford, Michigan, which is about 30 miles north of Detroit. And thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about my story. It's a little bit different than the stuff that you've been doing. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. I know that when we first chatted, I was excited because I think your story really is kind of unique because it sounds to me whenever in your history, from the outside looking in, walking down the street as an everyday person, you wouldn't have necessarily been able to tell that there was potentially massive problems going on internally. So, can you kind of talk about where you thought your health was and your body before you had that life-altering heart attack?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably about 12 months, about 10 months before I had the heart attack. I'm a roller coaster fanatic, so I love roller coasters. And there's a park not too far from about 4 hours from us at Cedar Point in Ohio, and they had a grand opening of a new roller coaster called the Gatekeeper. And so I went to meet what they call a media day, and the only way to get to that is to either be a member of the media or be a member of a roller coaster club, because they weren't actually open that day. It was like 2 days before the season opened. So I joined a roller coaster club so I could be one of the first ones to ride the roller coaster. So I went there. There was probably about 5 people there all together, so not a lot of people, and it was just for that one ride. And so I got there, and we actually got to ride the roller coaster like 4 or 5 a.m. and just kind of cool because they wanted all the morning TV stations and stuff to carry the event. And it lasted throughout the day. So throughout the course of the day, I'm like walking around, and I'm looking at the people, and it kind of hit me that there was a lot of overweight people there, which roller coaster fanatics or whatever. It's kind of amazing because it's not easy for a larger person to get in some of those roller coasters, so it's got to be a little bit uncomfortable for them or whatever. But throughout the day, I'm like noticing that there was just a lot of overweight people. But then I started to kind of like beat myself up a little bit, and caught myself kind of like judging these people. And I'm like, well, who are you? I mean, you're not in the greatest of shape. But so when I left there that day, I kind of had the intention of losing weight, because at that time I was about 215, 220 pounds. I wasn't a huge guy. It was mainly in the gut and the chin and stuff. But still, I wasn't happy when I looked in front of the mirror. So I knew that I needed to make a change. And just shortly after that, I went on a diet. It was a carb cycling diet. And I lost 40 pounds in 10 weeks, which was pretty quick. A lot of people thought that I was like dying or something. I was like, well, what are you doing, man? You're losing too much weight. But it was effective, and it worked. So I got down to 175 pounds. And I maintained that weight. And I did that again by carb cycling. I went to the gym. I worked out probably 3 or 4 times a week, and I ate what was deemed as being healthy at that time. Reduced, no fast food stuff, not a lot of processed stuff. Your lean meats and whatnot. So I maintained that after I lost the 40 pounds, which was kind of like my goal, because to reach 175 pounds, which was kind of what I was when I graduated from high school, 30, 40 years ago, whatever it was. So I maintained that for 7 months and continued to eat fairly healthy. And then just one day, it was like March 28, 2014. It was a Friday. I'm at work, and I go out to, actually for lunch. I went down to the gym because there's a gym right by us, and I got a quick little workout in. Came back, and it was just did my job. We had a afternoon meeting where we go over with the second shift some things that needed to be done, and pretty uneventful. It's just everyday boring stuff. And get out of the meeting, and I'm heading back to my office, and I'm walking down the aisleway, and I just felt like a tingly feeling, throughout my body, and I'm like, well, it's kind of weird. I mean, it was strange enough to where it like stopped me in my tracks. You know, but I had never experienced it before, and I didn't know what it was. So I stopped and paused and just kept on walking and headed back to my office. And when I got back there, I just sat down and was trying to figure out what was going on. And so I kind of like kicked back in my chair and felt a little lightheaded and dizzy, so I like leaned forward and that felt a little bit better, but then I started to sweat a little bit, and it wasn't, I'm not a sweating guy, so it was like pretty unusual for me to start breaking out in a sweat. So I knew that something was going on. I had no idea what it was. I wasn't in pain. I wasn't having trouble breathing. I just felt weird. So I picked up the phone and called our HR gal and asked her if she could come back, which I have never done before. So she comes back, and a couple of minutes later, and she says, "Hey, what's up?" I says, I'm not feeling too good." She says, "Well, do you want me to, drive you somewhere or call somebody?" And I says, "Yeah, why don't you call 911?" She said, "Really?" I says, "Yeah, something's just not right." And she knew I was serious because I wouldn't joke about stuff like that, right? So she gets on the phone and calls 911, and we coordinate for them to come back to the back of the shop, and not to like cause a whole lot of commotion, and because my office is right by the back shipping door, and so the fire department's like right down the road from us, so it only took a couple of minutes for the paramedics to get there. So they get there, and they're asking me, these typical questions, what are you experiencing? What did you have for lunch? And what do you feel like? And finally, they hooked up what they call a 12 lead to me, and he says, "Yeah, it appears that you're having a heart attack." I'm like, "All right, that's cool." Because in my mind, that just meant that there's some blockage. So let's go find out what it is, because I wasn't experiencing your typical chest pain, sitting on my chest, type heart attack. So he says, "Do you want us to take you to?" I says, "Yeah, So I told him what hospital. So they, put me in the back of the ambulance and take me there, and it probably took about 20 minutes or so. And in the meantime, it was just me and the paramedic that were in the back, and the other guy was driving, and we were just having normal conversation. He had me hooked up to an IV, and he was in communication with the ER team, at the hospital, giving them my vitals and what have you. So when we pull up to the ER, they back up and they get me out of there, and they take me into the emergency room, and they had a team ready to go to work on me. They were all prepared, and they take my clothes off, cut my shirt off, and slap some pads on me, and they're getting me ready. And there's an administration person that had come over and said, "Is this your address?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's my name. That's my old address. Here's my current address." And she says, "Don't worry about that. You got bigger things to worry about. We'll get that afterwards." I'm like, "All right," and so they're doing what they had to do, and my feet were like sticking up over the blanket that they had over me, and somebody said, "Hey, do you want some footies on?" I'm like, "Sure." They said, "Well, what color do you want?" I'm like, "I don't know. What are my choices?" And somebody said, "I think yellow would look good on." I'm like, "All right, yellow it is." And one of the nurses, she looks at me, she says, "You do realize you're having a heart attack, right?" I says, "Yeah," laughing. And he said, "Did he just say it's all good?" And they start laughing. But again, I wasn't feeling any pain. I mean, I was laying down. I was comfortable. And so they said, "We're going to take you to the cath lab, find out what's going on." I'm like, "All right." So they take me down the hall and up the elevator, and into the cath lab. And as soon as I get into the cath lab, the doctor comes over to me. He's wearing his mask on, and he looks down at me. He says, Mr. Willits, are you okay? Are you okay? He says, cough, make yourself cough. And I could hear him, and I was trying to cough, but I couldn't muster up anything. I just felt my whole body just go completely numb from head to toe, and just a loud ringing in my ear. And all of a sudden, the next thing I remember is I kind of like felt something, and I like popped my head up. My eyes are like wide as saucers, and I'm looking around, and I see everybody. I see the doctor. I see all the nurses and stuff. I'm like, what the heck is going on? All of a sudden, I heard clear, and I'm like, crap, they're gonna shock me. It's like, it's like felt like a Mack truck just like ran right over me, man. And that was the last thing I remember. And about 25 minutes later, I wake up in the recovery room, and and I looked at my 18-year-old son, because we had gotten hold of my two boys were there, and my sister was there. We'd gotten a hold of them when the whole thing started taking place, although they didn't know I was having a heart attack, because when we called him, we just said, he's not feeling good, and they're just taking him to the hospital. And so I looked at my son. I says, "Hey, what's up?" He says, "You need 3 stents." I'm like, "Oh, when am I going to get those?" He said, "They already put them in you." He said, "You flatlined 3 times. They had to shock you 11 times. They didn't think that you were going to make it." I'm like, "Really?" And then kind of reality kind of like started to hit in. So that's a long drawn out answer to your question of how I felt. But I mean, that's, I was healthy, worked out that day, and had lost 40 pounds, and was feeling good, was eating good, and still, almost didn't survive, that heart attack.
So you said that you flatlined 3 times. They had to shock you 11 times. Just to clarify, so there's no misunderstanding, that basically means that you died 3 times, correct?
That's how I look at it. Yeah, I mean, it was really the whole set of events. Probably, I mean, I was in the cath lab probably for not even 20 minutes when I looked at the timeline afterwards. So yeah, I mean, I basically died 3 different times. I don't know how many times they, if I flatlined and they shocked me like 2 or 3 times, but I did talk to my cardiologist a couple weeks after the fact, because I didn't get a chance to talk to him when I was in the hospital, because he had a scheduled trip overseas, so I didn't get to thank him for saving my life. But 2 weeks later, when he came back, I wanted to meet with him, because I had another stent scheduled, because they put 3 stents on me at that time, but they wanted to put a 4th stent on the other side, but they couldn't do both sides at the same time because of the dye and stuff that's in your body. It's not good for your kidneys. And but before they did that, I wanted to ask him a couple of questions or whatever. But but I said, can you kind of like walk me through what happened, And he says, yeah, basically, as soon as you came in the cath lab, you flatlined. He said, we shocked you. We shot you with some medicine, which normally, starts the heart rate back up and get you going and stuff. But you weren't reacting to it, so we cranked it up a little bit more and shocked you, and finally got you going. And then right away you flatlined again. So we cranked it up, shocked you again. He said we didn't even worry about it with anything because that wasn't working, So we just like shocked you, and then we got it going. We inserted the stuff that we needed to do to find out, what was going on. And he says, and you flatlined again. We had to shock you. Everything that we had inserted came flying out, So he said we had to reinsert everything, and then finally, we got you going, and we were able to find out where the blockage was and put some stents in. And away you go, man. But, yeah.
So did you have any prior heart health issues or anything, when you look back at your family tree, were there any issues that you became aware of after the fact, or that you were aware of? And also, what did your doctor recommend as steps to a quote unquote healthier lifestyle and preventing anything in the future?
Well, the answer to your first question is yeah, my dad had a heart attack when he was 71. He was still working in construction, and it was June 13th, 1997. I remember it like it was yesterday, getting that call, and I can imagine what my son felt like when he got that call, because I lived that, and I know, I'm glad they didn't tell him that I was having a heart attack, because I knew that my dad was having a heart attack, and they didn't think he was going to make it. And the drive to the hospital was just like overwhelming. But my dad survived that heart attack. He had a quadruple bypass. And recovered from it. I think like a month later, he was back at work. But unfortunately, 6 months later, he had a heart attack in his sleep and didn't survive that one. So he actually passed when he was 72 years old. So yeah, there was history there. Although I didn't really think of that because I mean, having a heart attack in your 70s, unfortunately, in our society, it's somewhat expected. Even though you don't. I mean, he wasn't like extremely overweight or anything. I mean, he worked and stuff. So it definitely wasn't expected when he had it. Some people you kind of, it doesn't surprise you when you hear that somebody had a heart attack because of their lifestyle or whatever. But with it was a total shock. But I didn't really think much about my own health because I was, a lot young. I mean, I was 53 when I had the heart attack, and again, I was in shape and doing the right things. My cholesterol was a little high, but I was bringing it down with what I was doing. My weight was coming down. My blood pressure was coming down. I was within reason, probably like, I don't know, 70% of the people that are walking around right now. So there was some history. And second question, what did my doctor recommend? Like I said, he went out of town right afterwards, so I didn't get to talk to him. But while I was in the hospital, I was in the hospital for 5 days, and my sister had a scheduled trip down to a place in Florida called Hippocrates Health Center or Health Institute, just on an educational journey. Well, when she got down there, she talked to a couple of doctors that were there, and she told them about what I experienced. 'Cause I was still in the hospital, and so she texted me. She says, talk to some of the doctors down here. They said to check into a vegetarian or a Mediterranean diet. I'm like, all right. So when I got out of the hospital, I hopped on Google and researched. Started. I knew what a vegetarian diet was for the most part, but I wasn't familiar with the Mediterranean diet. So I Googled that, and I came across a Pareto chart that had vegetarian, Mediterranean, and then plant-based. I'm like, the plant-based seemed to be, the best rated one as far as that chart was concerned. So I started looking into to plant-based and came across some information in a book called Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. And I'm like, that's what I want to find out right there. I want to if I can reverse this or prevent it. I mean, that's what I want to know. So I hopped on Amazon and ordered it for next day delivery because I didn't have anything else to do. So I wanted to read it now. And so I put in the order. And in the meantime, I Googled a little bit about the author that wrote it. It was Dr. Esselstyn, who I'd never heard of. And so I'm watching some YouTube videos and stuff of some presentations that kind of like a breakdown of the synopsis of the whole philosophy. And probably watched a couple hours worth of videos, watched a movie called Forks Over Knives, which a lot of people are familiar with, and then fell asleep. Before I fell asleep, when I ordered the book, there was a place where you could send away for some email for some more information. So, but they said it had to be heart related and it had to be real short, So I just shot an email and kind of told them about my Excel shell and sent it away. And so I'm watching the different YouTube videos and stuff and fall asleep. And I wake up the next morning, my phone rang and I look at my phone and it's like Ohio. I say, who the heck is calling me from Ohio? And I pick up the phone. I'm like, hello. He said, yeah, this is Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. I'm like, shut up, it is not. And it's like, I watched the videos of him, and his voice is very distinguishing. So I knew that it was, So I'm like, I grabbed my my little mini iPad real quick and put it on speaker, and I recorded the whole thing because I knew that I was too much in awe of this guy, calling me. I wasn't going to remember anything. So I recorded the whole thing. We talked for 25 minutes. I hung up the phone. From that day on, I've been plant-based, 100%. no compromise, you know. So when I saw my doctor, I was already, you know, a week after that, I was already 1 week into a plant-based a diet, and he's like, you know, he says like, well, you know, just be careful, you know. He says you seem like a motivated guy, and you're probably one of the 3% that could do something like that, you know. And I'm like, all right, so you're kind of aware of it, but you don't share the information with me, you know, to give me the opportunity to maybe better myself or get healthier, you know. So my doctor didn't tell me, you know, they said follow the Heart Smart, you know, menu, you know, look for the heart, the healthy heart, and you know, eat your lean meats, and you know, stay away from your fast food and stuff like that. So if I wouldn't have, you know, thanks to my sister, started researching a little bit, I mean, I don't know if I would be here today, to be honest with you.
I know that you talked about you had a drop in cholesterol, LDL, and HDL. Can you kind of take me through those drops, and also maybe explain a little bit for me or for somebody who may not completely understand what those numbers mean, kind of what that means for your health in your current state, compared especially to before the heart attack?
Total cholesterol, everybody's pretty familiar with, because when they check your cholesterol, they check your total cholesterol, your HDL, and your LDL. Your HDL is your good cholesterol. Your LDL is your bad cholesterol. Typically, in our society, they want your total cholesterol to be under 200. And at the time, at where I work at, we do an annual health assessment. So we get our blood drawn as part of our insurance policy. And the year prior to the heart attack, my cholesterol was, I believe, around 215 or 220 was my total cholesterol. My LDL, which is the bad cholesterol, was pretty elevated. It was, I don't know, in the 120s or 130s, I believe, maybe even a little bit higher. And then my HDL, which is your good cholesterol, was in the 40s, about 40 or 50, which wasn't too bad for where they wanted. So a year later, which was probably 3 months before the heart attack, with the 40 pounds that I had lost, I'd reduced my total cholesterol down to about 202, and then everything else was kind of like coming down in order. My bad cholesterol was coming down like it was supposed to, and my HDL was about the same. It had actually dropped a little bit. So heading in the right direction, and my blood pressure at the same time was a little bit elevated a year prior to the heart attack, and then that was headed in the right direction as well with the carb cycling diet that I did to get on there. And now, since I've been plant based, I mean, they after you had a heart attack, they put you on, you know, some heavy medication right off the bat, of course, and I did everything that they said to do, you know. But with the medication that they put me on the highest dose of cholesterol medication. Well, with the highest dose of medication and then being fully plant based, my total cholesterol came down to like 78, you know, which is insane. So I called my doctor up. I'm like, yo, doc, do you think we could maybe back off on the cholesterol medication? I don't think it's really that necessary. And he agreed. He said, you know, so we cut it in half and stuff. And it got it without medication. It was about 138 was my total cholesterol, and my LDL is, you know, probably in the 70s, and my HDL is what our society considers pretty low. It falls between 25 and 35, 25 and 30 really. But I asked Dr. Esselstyn, you know, if that was normal, and he said actually very historically correct. The Tarahumara Indians, who are primarily plant based, their normal HDL was 25. So he says you're fine. People, your doctors and stuff are going to tell you otherwise, but if you're plant-based and you stay 100% plant-based, then there's no reason to be alarmed if your HDL is low.
That's all fantastic. You said in an interview this: my research shows that I had about a 5% survival with what I experienced. My cardiologist told me that the keys for me was observing right away that something was wrong and calling 911. Staying calm throughout the process, as any anxiety would have escalated the situation sooner. And also mentioned that had I still had the additional 40 pounds, I probably would not have survived. Why did the extra 40 pounds in his mind make a difference?
Just the extra stress on my body, I think, because basically what had happened is my circulation had stopped, and he had the three things that he had mentioned that you covered, recognizing something right away. That was just it's kind of a fluke because I'm your typical male. I'm your stubborn, bullheaded. I don't need a doctor. It'll go away. I'm not into like medications and prescriptions and stuff. So for whatever reason, for me to recognize something was just unexplainable for the most part. From the outside looking in. So. Like you said, recognizing something right away. But number two was staying calm, and this kind of like goes in with the extra weight. I think by staying calm during the whole thing, I didn't give myself any extra anxiety, which would have created your blood pressure to spike. And I think with the extra weight, the same thing held true, that with the extra weight and what my body was going through, the blood pressure would have been higher, which would have tried to force it through the arteries and came to a not so good outcome. I mean, the way that it was right now, I mean, if I would have flatlined at work, he said there's no way you would have made it. He said if you would have flatlined in the ambulance, you wouldn't have made it. He said probably if you would have flatlined in the emergency room, you wouldn't have made it. He says you made it. You were in the right place at the right time at the exact moment for your survival. So yeah, it was pretty mind-boggling.
I know that again outwardly, and you had just lost weight. But if you could go back now to the person that you were and in the place that you were in life, and if you could have a conversation with that person, what would that conversation look like to kind of nudge yourself in a direction that maybe wouldn't have led to that, or maybe you could have potentially started improving your health before?
That's a great question, and I don't know if because I'm, like I mentioned, I'm your typical male, stubborn. I don't know if I would have got through to myself because information is out there, which is good. But on the downside, there's so much information and it changes so often. We don't know what we're supposed to believe. One time, butter is good for you, butter's not good for you. Eggs are good for you, eggs aren't good for you. There's so many variations over the last 20, 30, 40 years of seeing, what's healthy, what's not healthy. It always changes. So it's hard to get a grasp on what you're supposed to believe. But I mean, if I would have been somebody that listened, I would have told myself, look, regardless of if you're overweight or not, if you improve what you're eating, you get out what you put in. You are what you eat. We've all heard that. And the only reason that I made the change that I did is because of heart disease. So I'm not necessarily encouraging people to go plant-based or whatever, but definitely do research and find out. If I wouldn't have done my research, I probably would have had another episode, another stent, another heart attack. But I specifically chose this diet because there was plenty of research on it where it could stop it in its tracks and reverse it. And dying wasn't any fun, you know. But at the same time, people experience that they might have heart attacks or whatever, and the light bulb still doesn't go on, you know. So it's hard to say. Even if you experience something, it doesn't mean that, you know, that it's going to force you to change or encourage you to change, you know. So, you know, I would like to say that I would have told myself, you know, start eating really healthy, you know, not only for, you know, for your health's sake, you know, but there's so many other benefits to doing it, which again, that's not why I chose to go plant-based. But after you do it, because it's been a little over 2 years now, um, after you do it, you realize there's different benefits along with your own health. You know, you're helping the planet out. I mean, there's just a lot of different things to look at that you learn, you know, through the progression. So I don't know. I get why people have a difficult time, kind of like buying into, you know, the whole theory, because you know, there's a lot of different variations of plant based. I mean, there's different doctors. You know, me in particular, you know, I'm fully plant based, and because I'm a heart disease patient, I've limited oil, 100% of oil. I don't use any oil at all. I don't do avocados. I don't do nuts. You know, because I've had a heart attack. You know, you can be there's plenty of people plant based that eat that stuff too. You know, but again, it all comes down to research and you know, what you take out of it and where you want yourself to be, you know. But you know, it's not easy to buy into. I mean, there's people that make fun of me at work all the time because of what I eat and stuff, and it doesn't bother me, you know. I mean, I was in the pizza business for 25 years, for crying out loud, you know, making cheese and lasagna and ribs and sub sandwiches and you know, people say, well, how can you just like give that stuff up, you know? And it's like, you know, it's hard to explain, and I don't want anybody to experience what I experienced to get it. But even if they did, they still might not get it. So I don't know why I'm so passionate about what I did, you know, but because I did survive for whatever reason, you know, it's an incredible story, you know, and you know, I'm happy to tell it to anybody that wants to listen, you know, because I almost wasn't here to tell it. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what I would have told myself my old self to prevent that from happening.
Well, I'm glad you're still around and that we have the opportunity to chat and share this. I read this quote on your Facebook page. It said, "Actually, I just woke up one day and decided I didn't want to feel like that anymore or ever again. So I changed, just like that." And I just want to say thanks for the inspiration. Thanks for being honest and sharing your story and being open. And I know that it'll be great information for people who, you know, aren't necessarily just overweight, but realize that no matter where you're at, taking a real look at your health and what you're putting into your body, and regardless of whatever your desire is, it's never a bad idea to consider those things, because we all want to be around for a while, and like you said, dying's not really the best option. So just want to say thanks, Dave, for your openness and the conversation, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jason. Thanks a lot.
All right, have a good one.
All right, thank you, too.